bro, I'm gonna protect this hip hop shit, because if you don't, and I know you guys do too, if we don't, like, it will go to shit.
I think hip hop will always be a voice for the people.
Yo, it's good to see you.
You too, brother.
Thank you for joining us, man, here on our What's the Headline podcast from Ambrosia for Heads.
Right up. Of course, man. You guys always been not only have you always looked out for me, but even if you didn't, you've been a quality outlet, which means even more, you know.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate that. So for those at home, we have Statik Selektah joining us today. And I don't know if you know it, man, but you are the first ever interview that we ever did for AFH back in 2011.
That's dope.
Down at A3C.
Dope.
And even more bugged out is that as I was interviewing you, you were including me in your video to Play the Game.
With Kill It. Man, yo, so much was, I almost said Kill It, Big Crit and
Big Crit
Gibbs.
Freddie Gibbs, yeah.
It's crazy, man, because so much was going on at that time, and actually a friend of mine passed away while we were shooting the video.
Oh, wow.
And it was a really emotional day. And wow, looking back at that, it feels like forever ago, but yeah, 9 years ago? Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, so what are some of the biggest changes for you in those 9 years?
Everything. You know, that was definitely a certain phase of my life that we had a lot of fun, man. We were doing like all the hip hop festivals were still popping. South by was still kind of, South by was a virgin and didn't get completely raped yet. Like that shit, the way South by changed since then, and A3C and all that was like
crazy.
I don't mean to throw the word rape around like loosely. You know what I mean, though? Like the whole thing got
super corporate.
It got crazy. Now it's like 2011 was a fun time, man. I feel like it was a in between phase too. There's like a certain group of artists that had success in that time, and I think that dudes like Skyzoo and Torre, Term, Rex, there was a Black Milk. There was like a whole group of artists right there that was shining. Mm-hmm. That kind of were in between the end of the CD era and the beginning of the iTunes era. And it was like a double-edged sword for them. But I feel like their movements kind of birthed the opportunities for the artists that came next. Mm-hmm. Because, 2011 was the beginning of the Freddie Gibbs and the Big Crits and the, that whole wave, the J. Cole's, and all of them were coming out, and it was like a new phase starting. But I feel like it was like a transition period. I think about it all the time. Mac Miller was fresh out. Rest in peace. It was a fun time, man. It was like I saw a lot of change in hip hop, and now we're in what I was saying was I feel like it opened up the doors for a lot of artists. When I look at like Griselda, they're killing it. The Hustles, Bananas, all that. But I feel like if they came out back then, they might not even have the same shot they got now. I feel like there was like because I remember the first time I met Westside and the first time we worked. And ironically enough, it was at the first place we really hung out was at the Masquerade in Atlanta where A3C was. But this is like 2015 now. Mm-hmm. And he played me the record. He's like, I got Skyzoo on this. And I was like, oh, word, that's what's up. And I was like, not surprised, but I was like, oh, he got Sky on here as like, me and Sky have known each other forever, but we hadn't done anything around that time. And Westside's like, yeah, man, he's like one of my biggest, like, that was a big influence on Westside Gunn. He loved what Sky did. Mm. So I look at it and I look at how they were doing everything coming out at first. And I'm like, they were watching the blueprint that was being laid down for like this new wave of what's going on now. And I love it. Like, I'm happy to be part of all these generations, going back to, I feel like the first part of the game that, forget about the mixtapes, forget about all that. I'm talking about just my production. The first era of rap, my production started to have some shine was like the Koch Records era, because I was doing stuff with like Foxy Brown and AZ, and those were my first placements really ever. A random KRS song, and those were my first like real placements. And then I watched every era, the Koch Records era, the Landspeed era was like the same kind of. Koch came right after Landspeed to me, and then watching everything change when iTunes was like everybody looked at iTunes as such a threat to the vinyl and CDs. And at the end of the day, now we look at it, it's like, damn, I wish people were still rocking iTunes the way they were.
Yeah.
Like, you could be number 3 on iTunes now and be like number 150 on the Apple Music, because so the kids are streaming these songs so many times. It's the same as like back in the day when we used to like listen to radio and you'd hear a 50 Cent song 75 times a week on one radio station. That's how it's doing it with the streaming now. And it's like the kids are still controlling it. But yeah, it's cool, man. It's cool being present for all this and just like really, I feel like at the end of the day, I was part of all those phases. And now we're here in this new streaming era and vinyl's back. I love that. And also like sampling's at like an all-time high at the same time that it's at an all-time low. It's like in the mainstream or like major label albums, it's like, it's rare to hear a sample now. You'll hear them here and there, but like even when I'm placing records now, it's like we're replaying stuff, we're getting original compositions to sample. And the underground is just doing whatever they want, the way we always did. But it's like dudes are doing reckless, like craziness now. I see, like, I'm pretty sure there's a couple songs up for a Grammy or an album up for a Grammy this year that didn't even clear the sample.
Word, yeah.
I look at that and I'm like, wow. So, and don't get it twisted. I still spend, and I will claim this, I spend more money on records than any other producer in 2020, 2019, 2018. Man, I've been going ham with the samples and records. The only person I've ever seen this spent, and I know Alchemist is that's my uncle, Q-Tip's my dad, Primo's my dad. Like, I get that, but I'm talking about like the cats in my age group. Ain't nobody buying as many records as me. So
yeah. What do you prefer with samples? What do you prefer with samples over like original productions?
Well, this new album I just dropped is like almost 90% original music. So I'm really excited about that. We're gonna aim for some big placements with this, and there's just many more opportunities when you don't have to worry about it, or when you actually clear something, which I've done before too. I'm talking about my albums. When I do something for Joey or Nas or whoever, it's cleared. Don't worry about that. And I always sample. But my point is like I went so hard on this album trying not to have samples on there that now I feel like I have to defend my sample ignorance. So I've been going ham with the samples still. I always do that. And I love that like cats like Ransom are shining right now, just looping the kid Nicholas Craven literally just loops something and puts it out with him rapping on it. And it's like, that's cool too. Like there's so many different waves to it. There's like the Rock Marcy, like no drums wave. And then there's like they're using the samples with more like bigger drums in the sample, but not adding them. There's like so many waves of it now. And I just love where hip hop's at.
Yeah, no, it's a dope album too, man. For those who don't know, it's called The Balancing Act. Out now. You got a ton of guests, some old faithfuls, Joey Bada's terminology, styles, like, a lot of people like that. But one of the tracks that really surprised me, and, I'm not sure if it's the first single or not, but Keep It Moving with Joey and Nas.
Yeah, it was the first
phenomenal.
Thank you.
And, so people would expect to hear them on your record, but then you got Gary Clark Jr. on there, which I think is like probably left field for a lot of people. So how did that happen? How did you guys connect?
Man, it's crazy because I went to this, I've been a fan of Gary Clark and I've been like, familiar with who he is and all that. But I went to a show right down the street from my studio and it was Alicia Keys in a room with like maybe 50 people. She put on this very intimate show. And I look over, she was bringing out special guests and all that. I look over and Gary Clark's is standing right next to me. And, it was like late night on a Saturday. Everybody had been drinking and all that. I was like, I'm not going to bug this dude. But I was like, I hit up his IG and I was like, yo, I seen you at the spot. I was like, because I clicked on this is what really happened. I left this part out. I clicked on his IG and it said that he followed me. So I was like, oh shit, okay, I wish I said something now. So I DM'd him. I was like, yo, peace, man, big fan. And he's like, yo, same here. And I was like, I got this record I'm coming out with Nas and Joey. Now, mind you, neither one of them were on the song yet. I was just like, but I knew it was coming, but like, I didn't have no record with Nas and Joey. It was just a conversation that I had a lot of faith in. So I sent him the beat, the original version of the beat. And man, he was like, send it over. He sent it back with just him going in on guitar. And then I remember telling Nas people and they were like excited about Gary being on it. And I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, but I told Joey, and Joey's like, who is that? And I was like, just look him up. And then he's like, yeah, but he was just like, you sure? Because I want it to be me and Nas. And I'm like, no, bro, it is you and Nas. But like adding that element it just changes the whole thing and brings like a whole nother audience and like vibe to it. I'm like, just trust me on this. And then I guess he had a couple conversations and he hit me back. He's like, nah, he's like, that's dope. He's like, I looked into who he was, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, Joey's always about learning, you know, being put on the music anyway. And he's very on top of things. So shout out to Joey for being, you know, a needle in a haystack when it comes to this generation. Cause a lot of kids don't want to hear that. Like, nah, this dude's the man. They'll be like, nah, if it's not popping around me, you know, certain people have certain attitudes with it. Joey's always open to learn. So he's been like that since I met him at 16.
Yeah. And it's real integrated. It's really well integrated into the record too. It doesn't overpower anything. But speaking of Joey, I mean, you've known him since he was a child. Like, I mean, I think you produced on 1999, right? Which was also 2011. So, you know, what's it like seeing him grow, not only as an artist but as an actor too?
It's amazing, man. I've watched him. Like, he was always an old soul since I met him, but I watched him like take this serious since he was that age. And I mean, I've never really seen that before. Even when I was like, when I was his age, you know, I was taking it very serious, but I didn't have no platform or business to do it with. So I was always like, I'm going to do this. And people would be like, you're bugging. Joey came right out swinging. And, you know, he's a kid from Brooklyn that just grew up literally. Like, I think he was born like a day or two. I think one day, or the same day maybe as, Smith and Wesson's The Shining, and that always bugged me out.
Oh, wow.
Because his mother was like cool with all them, and he grew up like he literally grew up in this. Like he remembers hearing Biggie as like a baby and all that. So he like grew up in the middle of the Brooklyn, in the middle of all this great music, and you know it shows because look at what he does with his music, and that's good parenting. So shout out to Miss Kim.
Yeah.
Word up. So, I mean, you know, the album's called The Balancing Act. Tell us, you know, why that title for this album?
I had it before 2020 started. I actually been teasing it for almost 2 years now. And this year just amplified it all. Like I had the cover was shot before this whole quarantine, before the pandemic, all that. And my life just kept, life can imitate art can imitate life. But it was like this whole thing has been crazy because there's so many layers to it now. It's like the balancing act meant just like, I wake up every day, be with my kids. She go to sleep around 8 p.m. and I go to the studio and then the club and the madness of touring and coming home and being a dad. And that's really what the balancing act was. But that's like that's just the beginning of it now. It's like with this year, and I feel like everyone in the world had to deal with the balancing act this year, especially people with kids, especially with looking for new ways to make money and all this. It's like life is a balancing act for real. And this album just like amplified it. And as the album went on too, like pieces were coming in. Like when Jack Harlow's record, he did that verse, like I was like probably halfway through the album, and he's talking about everything going on in that verse. Like I never would have got that song done that way if we weren't going through this, because the beat spoke to him a certain way, and like what he's talking about on the record just wouldn't have happened. So it's crazy. It's like a silver lining for me. And, certain other records I was waiting on didn't even get done. And then, you got records like Way Up with Havoc and Bun B talking about Prodigy and Pimp C. And on the hook, Highway Supreme killed it. But we're talking about, everybody we lost in the last couple of years, from Nipsey to Mac Miller, Sean Price, Steez, like Fife. We mentioned everybody on the record, but it's like that song is another one that like hip-hop fans will hear what they're talking about. It'll really hit them a certain way. But the hook anyone can relate to. So I think this album's like very relatable on a lot of levels.
Yeah, that song. Go ahead, Jay.
I mean, Statik, you and I over the years, I mean, in addition to your career, we've built over DITC, and you introduced me to Q-Tip many years ago. Like we're both, hardcore hip hop heads. That being said, the record Time with Jack Harlow that you just mentioned, it's my favorite joint on the album.
I'm hearing that a lot, which is cool.
Same here.
And it's interesting because Jack, I mean, with his material, he continues to just rope me in more. And he talks about in his verse building with you around the time Mac died. And I just want to ask you, as such a trusted gatekeeper of this culture, talk to me what gravitated you towards Jack, in 2018 when that was going on.
It's crazy because when he said it on the song, I got goosebumps because I didn't like really recall it. When he said it, I remembered the night we went out. We only, hung out a couple times, probably like a handful of times. But there's one specific night he hit me up and he was like, "What's going on? I'm in the city." And I was playing his record a lot, and we were chopping it up a couple times. And he was like, "What's going on? Anything going on? I want to go out." And I was like, "I'm going to Marquee." It was a Saturday night. I was just going out to go out and see what's going on. And he was like, "Can I roll with you?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And he came out, and we're sitting at this table right in front of the DJ booth with all these bottles, badass chicks everywhere. Like this shit was popping, and we're just having a serious ass conversation. And that's something that happens a lot in my life, like when I go out with a certain artist or whatever. But we're just sitting there at the table, like sitting on the couch in the middle of this crazy party. And he was asking me about Mac. And I think Mac had just died maybe like within a week of that conversation. And I was fucked up. I still am. But I guess he said it in the song, like he could really feel that. And I think it influenced him. Obviously Mac Miller had some influence on him. But yeah, I first got put on the jack with a record called Sundown. And then I met him at South by. And then I fuck with the kid's energy, and he can really rap. Not every song he does is my style that I play on my radio show, but I love the records. Like if I hear him, it's not like we've been in the club for a while, but if I hear him in the right atmosphere, I love him. I'm really happy with his success for what's popping and all that. And he's rapping on that. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably just caught onto him this year with that record, but obviously he's been doing it for some time. So can you shed any light on the work he's put in?
On Jack? I mean, Jack is just, he's breaking, anytime an artist comes out and just does them and it seems genuine, I love it. And that's what really he's been doing. He's not trying to force nothing. He's like a swagged out kid from Kentucky that moved to Atlanta, and like seeing him in the atmosphere and the love he gets is like, it's a different thing. Cause it's not the same as what Mac did. It's not the same as, obviously the other day he's going to get labeled a white rapper cause that's what people do. Obviously we've grown out of that a little bit in hip hop cause it's more normal now. But if someone came out with the same thing as Mac or the same way as whoever, it would get labeled that way. I feel like Jack Harlow got his own look, his own vibe. And, I mess with him, man. His work ethic's crazy. He's focused on it.
Yeah, he's working with interesting artists too. He's got that record with Problem and J-Rock too, which is dope and out of left field. So I attended one of your listening sessions. Is a press event for Lucky 7 back in 2015, and at that time you were really adamant that was going to be your last record that you did as an artist. Since then, you've had 8, and now The Balancing Act. What is it that doing your own records gives you that working with other artists doesn't?
If I could rephrase it back then, I would say, hey, a couple of years from now, I'm gonna do this album called The Balancing Act, and that's gonna be my last album. Now, it's way worse now. Like when I look back at that album, you know what it was? That album came out 2 weeks before my daughter was born, and I was like, you know what? I'm not chasing no rappers around. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I was going to stay busy either way, producing for other people and doing this or collab albums or whatever. But I was like, the whole process of putting out one of these albums like that I've been doing it's pretty excruciating at times. And that's how I feel right now. I'm just like, when I turned this album in, I'm not going to lie, I've never felt so relieved in my life as far as turning in an album. This was the one that I was like, it was turned in. I was still waiting on a couple things, and I was like, nah, I'm putting it in. Shout out to Killer Mike. He came through with the verse like last minute, and I didn't even hit him up till last minute too. So that says a lot about him. He was just like, bro, whatever you ever need. He was like, I remember when you were at my shows when no one was there, there'd be 100 people and you were at every show that you could be at. And he's like, anything you need, I got you. And that hit me a certain way too, because me and Mike are way past the music, but the fact he even put that in the conversation, like, shout out to Killer Mike. And yeah, man, I was just really relieved when I turned this album in because I wanted it to drop on Black Friday because it marked 25 years of me being a DJ, and it just had so much. It was like my anniversary date. It was full circle. Doing the first single with Joey and Nas is full circle for me because obviously everybody knows that me and Joey rock together and me and Nas rock together. But like I was, DJing for Nas 10 years ago in Hawaii and doing mixtapes with him in 2006 and all these. That was like a beginning for me in New York. And then now here we are. And it's like, if I didn't put Joey and Nas together, I would have felt whack about it.
25 years ago, that's a specific date. What happened back then What got you started? What was it? What was the venue?
Thanksgiving 1995, man. I went to New Jersey for Thanksgiving, my family's house, and my cousin was like, "Yo, you got to listen to Hot 97," because I was already into Wu-Tang and Nas and out Tribe. I was already like heavy into it, but I wasn't like even really the least bit interested in DJing. Like I had a friend or two that had turntables, but I went to New York, to Jersey, and I put on Hot 97 and just sat there with my headphones, like literally for 48 hours, just listening to every show. But the one that really caught me was Primo did a live mix, and my alarm keeps going off. Primo is one of the DJs that did a guest set that day, and he was doing these mixes from like group home records that weren't even out yet into Lord Finesse, into the way he was doing it was just like mesmerized me. Like he was blending them so perfect and then bringing them back and scratching, and it was a certain flavor. And then the same thing, like Kid Capri was on, Funk Flex, and it was just a moment, bro. It spoke to me a certain way, and I was like, nah, when I get home, this is like literally the next day when I went back up north, I was like, this is what I'm doing with my life. Like I just decided it right there. I was like, this is it. And I like, it was like a meant to be moment, because I literally haven't looked back since that day. Ever. There's never been 1 second in my entire life since that day in 1995 that I was like, maybe I'll do this. Like ever. It's always been this.
You remember any records you played in that set?
How many records?
Or any of the records? You remember any of the records you played during that set?
But I didn't. No, I didn't play a record.
Oh, okay.
I was listening to Hot 97, and I heard.
Got you. So that was it. Got you.
Nah, that was the day I started buying records.
The day you decided. Yeah.
I took my dad's turntable out the living room, put it in my room. Like that was when I literally started scratching like the next day. So I consider that day a very big moment in time for me. And then fast forward, here we are, and it's like it's bugged out because like Preem's one of my best friends now. Like the way you end up, like most people say, there's a saying like, don't meet your heroes, because sometimes you can be really heartbroken. Like I'm fortunate for me, like most of my heroes I've met have ended up becoming like, extended family, or just like, it's a dream come true, man. So I'm very thankful and grateful, especially being here in the middle of a crazy year and just being embraced by the people that I am. And it's a year where you really you figure out what's important,
I want to you mentioned your daughter being and having the artwork, years before the album came out, The Balancing Act. Both you and Terminology just make fatherhood such an important part of your brands. And I mean, just talk to me about that. That didn't exist in 95 like that with hip hop. And I have to think for all of your fans, both of you guys, that just sends such a positive message that I think it's understated sometimes in the hip hop community.
It's funny to me because it's not a reach. It's like, it's not, I'm not saying you said it was, but the fact that it wasn't that in 95 or wasn't that in 85, like, I feel like there was just like a distance the way we looked at our fathers. Like we could be like this with them now, but like growing up, it was like usually we're either scared of your dad or like there was a certain things you didn't talk about, or there was like an uncomfortableness sometimes. And I was close to my father, into my teenage years, but now it's like there's something about just being a dad that it's like it's all I want to do. Obviously, I think we have. I'm speaking for me in term. We have I don't want to say a luxury, but it's like an earned luxury that we can be with our kids all day, and we don't work 9 to 5s. We work at nighttime, and we do what we got to do. But the fact that I can be with my kid all day is like, she's my everything. Like, of course, I put on my album cover or talk about her all day because it's the best experience. And I know Term feels the same way, but it's like, there are a lot of, we have to stand up for ourselves, because not only are there a lot of whack ass deadbeat dads out there, but there's also a lot of mothers that like talk down on the dads, and the dads get a lot of slack in life in general. You can be the perfect dad and still get shitted on at some point. So I think when Term came up with Good Dad Gang, it was like really just standing up for what we do and the work we put in, the sacrifice, all for our kids, man. It's like, it's all I could even imagine, man. Like I went through it this year where, I don't want to get too much into it, but basically I became a single dad this year. And now it's even more of a balancing act because the last couple of months of finishing this album, I have my daughter half the week, and it would be like no music, nothing, no drinking, no none of that. And then when I drop her off, I got 3 days to do this album, and it'll be like every week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'd be like nonstop working on the album, mixing, mastering, going after. Like even the days I had her, I wasn't even chasing verses. I wasn't going out. It was like a switch, and that was the real balancing act this year. And you know, I'm thankful for all of it, man. Even with this interview, I was like, I can't do it until Thursday because the other day, like I don't do press, I don't do none of that on the other days, you know.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you know, when you talk about that experience 25 years ago, I mean, you and I are close in age, and you carry that love of hip hop with you from what you do with Fame, or you got Thurston Howe on this album, which is really dope. You've remained so true to not only the underground, but veterans of the underground. Just tell me about your refusal to compromise, because I think we've all watched so many people constantly turn their back on their roots, and you never have. You've carried.
I hate it. I talk about it all the time, man. Like there's certain artists that I feel a certain way about because they came out name dropping certain people, and then when they got on, they didn't like hold up to their part of the bargain. Like there's just certain artists that it pisses me off, but I would never ever do that. Like to this day, first of all, someone like Little Fame, like that's my brother, man. He's here multiple days a week. That's different. But as far as like someone like Thurston, right? He's never been on one of my projects. We never did one song before, but we've known each other for probably 20 years, like off and on through shows and through running around, being on tour, being in Miami, he spent a lot of time in Boston. It was always just a mutual respect. And then this year I was so happy and proud of him when the Ralph Lauren documentary came out and he was in it. I had him come up to the radio show, and he's been on my show a couple times before that too. But this was the time. Every time we'd talk about doing something, it would kind of just get lost in the shuffle. And this time I was like, nah, bro, I need you on my album. And the Sean Price verse was like a blessing, so crazy. I was going through sessions in my computer, and I found it. I was like, oh my God, what is this? And it was just this verse that Sean did for my man. It never got used. So I made a couple phone calls. I was like, bro, I need your blessing to use this. And he's like, go ahead. Like it never came out. You can't find it anywhere. So I took the acapella and put it on the other thing. And like me and Sean were like this. So I know he would have approved, especially with him and Thurston. Word. You know, both of them are, you know, they're both low lives and DCEPs, which is crazy. Anyone that knows Brooklyn, like that's crazy history. And Thurston was talking about that a lot on my show before he even found out I put Sean on the record. So the fact it came out like that's crazy. And it was just us paying homage. You know, Sean was a real low head. I've been going ham in the last couple of years. I grew up, you know, having a lot of polo and all that, but the last couple of years I've really been going crazy. And I had to talk to Thurston and be like, yo, bro, I don't want you to think it's like weird out of nowhere. I've been going ham with it, but it just felt, you know, I never had, keep it a buck. I couldn't afford to do that when I was younger, you know? So, yeah, we definitely connect and talk. I actually mailed him a piece today, man. Like that's my dude. So shout out to Thurston Howe, who's, if you don't know who he is, you got to Google him because he's the god at this. And you know, to have the last joint I ever do with Sean be with Thurston is crazy for me because you know I'm adopted by Brooklyn at this point. I've been here for 16 years, and all my big bros are like from Fame to Sean, rest in peace, to Primo, to so many people that have so much history in Brooklyn. Smith & Wesson. I think me and Smith & Wesson about to knock out a project, so I'm excited for that.
Okay.
Too. All right. Yeah. So what's the process like when you create an album? Do you have like a list of artists you want to get, or like is it more organic? How does it work?
I make the list after I have like 2 or 3 records. I usually have to have like 2 or 3 songs, and I'll be like, nah, it's time. It's time to start this. And with this album, the moment that happened, I was in the Bahamas with Joey at this crazy studio. We went on like a retreat in 2019, and it was like me, Joey, Chuck Strangers, Powers, a couple producers, and his engineer. And we went out there, and it was just like focused on Joey's album. But we had 8 studios in this crazy complex in this like private neighborhood. It was so crazy because we were staying in like this compound with like all like Tiger Woods owns and Justin Timberlake. It's crazy. So we're out there riding around golf carts. We got private chef, all this craziness, but we're just in the studio literally like 19 hours a day. And I had my own room. So I was in there cooking the whole time. I probably made like 60 beats there in 8 days. And a couple on the album from those sessions. But the one song, Watch Me, with Joey, he heard the beat and he started I think we were on like IG Live messing around. He started freestyling to it. And I was like, nah, we got to do that one. So I brought it back in and he recorded the song. And on the hook, he goes, yo, on point stat. I was like, oh shit, okay. So we made it. The next day we're sitting at breakfast and I'm just like at the table and I was like, I was like, you don't even want me to say this right now because we're focused on your album. But I was like, let me get that song, bro. And he's like, nah, bro. Like, he's like, I got a vision for it. He had like this whole thing for it. And I was like, bro, if you give me it, I'll like use that as like the intro to my radio show every week, which I started tonight with, I did it as the intro tonight. But I'm like, I need that record. And he's like, whatever, man, take it. So that moment that he was like, take it, in my brain, I was like, new album time, let's go. That was the moment that I was like, nah, I gotta put this together. It was actually the same day that West Side Gun had sent me, I sent him a beat a while ago and he sent it back to me and he's like, yo, I want Fat Joe on this. And I was like, it's not that simple, bro. Like in my head, I was like, you should hit up Fat Joe then. Cause I'm like, it ain't that simple. So I was like, I'll text it to him for you. So I texted to Joe and I remember I was like, yo, this is from West Side Gun, peep it. And he goes, what do you want me to do? I was like, I don't know. I was like, West Side wanted me to send it to you. I'm the messenger. And he's like, he didn't say nothing. So I was like, oh man, you know, Joe's not the dude you just send shit to or whatever. Like Joe's the coolest dude, don't get it twisted, but he's also not the dude to just expect things from. And that day, like the next day or whatever, within 24 hours, Joe just sent it back to my text with his verse on it. And that was Kelly's Corner 2 from Hitler 7 that the West Side dropped. So I was like, I was bugged out from that too. And then I think that's why I didn't get Joe on this album though, because I think he felt like he did that as a favor for the album. Joe's my big bro forever, man. Shout out to Joey Crack. But yeah, that was the same day. So it was like all the vibes out there was so bananas, man. And you know, Joey's album's incredible. I can't wait for people to hear it. That's why we were out there. So that song "Watch Me" is like a product of that, all those sessions. And so is the beat with Black Thought, The Healing. That beat's I made that beat there. I think I made the one with Havoc and Bun B. There's a grip of beats on the album that I made like in that short time, and that's that Bahamas sessions.
Did you make Shine while you were down there?
Nah, I made Shine a long time ago. There's like 50 versions that song went through.
Wow.
There's like probably 4 or 5 verses that's been on that song, but I'm happy the way it came out.
Yeah, when you talk about sampling, you know, I mean, Roy Ayers' joint is you know, hip hop, you know, royalty, and here we are, you know, 30 years after Brand Nubian, and you're still flipping it in new ways and doing contemporary things with it, which is dope.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy to me because my man, shout out to my man Lazy Boy, he sent me the session, the multi-tracks of Everyone Loves the Sunshine.
Oh wow.
Because the way I flipped it, you can't do that with the record. Like I had to go in and take the different, you know, the bass notes and chop them up and the piano and all that. And I was just happy to be messing with that. But when I made it, someone was here. I forget who was here. They were like, yo, I think Little Fame was here. He was like, Joey, you sound dope on that. I'm like, yeah, I was already thinking that. So I sent it to Joey that day and he like sent it right back. Like, yo, this is crazy, blah, blah, blah. And we had to, you know, when it came down the sample, obviously we knew we could clear it because so many people have used it. So I reached out to Roy's daughter who manages him. And Roy heard the record before anyone came to clear it with him. So I gave like a kind of, you know, like a just not a warning, but like just an advance of the song so he could hear it. And she's like, my dad's cool with it. Like, let's do it. So clearing the record wasn't even that hard. And he actually didn't even take that much of the record either. I was really surprised and happy about that. So that record holds a special place in my heart. I love that Joey record, Sean.
Yeah.
You know, so in addition to Joe, you got a few artists that you work with pretty regularly, but you in turn are a whole different level. You got multiple projects together, multiple songs.
Yep.
You know, he was actually the second interview for AFAs because you guys were together that day. Can you talk about the bond you guys have? Because I know it's bigger than just music.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we both grew up in this. We were born in the same hospital, which is crazy. Same year, and we grew up in around the same neighborhoods, but I moved away when I was 10. So he used to come to this club. I met him when I was 16 at this club. It was called Heaven in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. And it was crazy over there because every Friday night I would DJ, and there would be like 500 people from Lawrence, from Lowell, some from Boston, from all over New Hampshire. There was like that whole area. Everybody would go to this club on Friday nights, and there'd be insane fights. People get like, it was insanity. But we had an open mic at the end of the night. This is in the 90s, 98. It's crazy when I look back on it because for some reason that's like the end of the 90s to me, which it is, but it's still the 90s and the world was a crazy place. Term would walk up every night at like 1 a.m. at the end of the night and be like, yo, I got bars, put me in the open mic. And he'd get on and he'd be wearing his little like Mortal Kombat Raiden hat. And he was trying to battle everybody. And we just connected off of like, you know, name dropping the kind of music we were listening to. And at the time, it was a lot of underground Boston stuff like Mr. Liff and 7L Esoteric. And, you know, Rex was like, we looked at Rex like, oh shit, Rex is coming to the club. Like, shout out to Rex, man. That's my brother too. But we connected over that to the point where he was like, yo, come to my crib in Haverhill. I got, you know, I got records. He was like so proud. He's like, I collect records. And that was rare for someone that wasn't you know, he was a 16-year-old rapper. He wasn't a DJ. He never tried to DJ, none of that. He had a record collection though, because he wanted the 12 inches with the instrumentals and acapellas and all that. And I remember he had an ASR X and all that. So I'd go over there and then he'd come up to my mom's crib and we just talk rap shit. Like neither one of us I wasn't even talking about beats yet. I was making them on the low, but not just like, fast forward a couple of years, I'm doing my thing in Boston. And this is like 2003 now. He was dropping his first album he was working on called Out the Gate, and he wanted me to scratch on the intro. So he came through, I did the cuts, and then I was like, yo, I'm moving. He's like, what? Like we were just linking back up 5 years later. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm moving to New York. So I moved to New York and he would come down. At the time he was working with Dan Green, and Dan Green was working at Koch. So Term would come around and like, you know, freestyle my mixtapes or whatever. But I ended up putting out that album that I did the scratches on 3 years later. I ended up putting out as the first release on Show Off Records, my label. So through those years, like being in the Bronx and really putting in, like, those were the years we grinded it out. We were running around the city, just meeting people and doing everything we had to do. And those were the years where he was like bugging Primo for a beat and all that. And one night in 2006, Primo was like, you think Term would like this? And played Watch How I Go Down. And a lot changed from there. And it, you know, it was that was a pivotal moment, man. So ever since then, I mean, you know, we became brothers early, but it was those years in the Bronx that we really became close. And now Term got the studio next door now. You know what I mean?
Oh wow, yeah. So
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jake.
You know, you mentioned like the Term Bug and Premiere. I want to ask you, just because you are such an ambassador of hip hop, you work with all regions, all eras. You're a gatekeeper. How does Statik Selektah, nice guy, you know, does so much for the culture? How do you tell people no when they want to be on your album or they want this or want that? Like, what does that look like for you?
I like that you said gatekeeper because it's such a controversial word now in 2020. There's nothing wrong with the word gatekeeper. Like I see people online act like it's a threat or like a power move or any of that. And I don't call myself that. I just find it interesting when I watch certain people be like, the gatekeepers are over, this and that. People just take I just take pride in the fact that, like, in my lane, like, when you hear certain names and you think about certain artists, you probably heard them on Show Off Radio and Shade 45 first. You probably heard them on my album first. Like, I take pride in that. And that's not being like a gatekeeper. Like, you can't get on if you don't mess with me. That's not what it's saying. It's saying like my ear and my lane, what I do, like I take pride in it. So if someone comes around playing a record that it does not fit my shit, don't take it personal. You just don't match what I'm doing at the time. And it's crazy because all the time people get, you know, they feel a certain way when they bring me a record and I don't play it. It's like, my show is my show because they trust me to do what I do. So why am I going to go outside my lane or my comfort zone? Not my comfort zone, but what I'm known for and what my fans and listeners love. Why am I going to do that just because you're emotional? Like, you'd be surprised what some of these rappers say when it's like they'll bring me a trap record or a club record or whatever, and it's like, bro, good luck with that. It's a good song, or it might not be. Either way, or if it's a boom bap record, it's not a good song. I'm not gonna play it. Like it has to sit with me a certain way. The mix got to be right. The feeling got to be right. Like, and this, I'm just speaking on my show. I'm not talking about nobody else's. I'm speaking of mine. And it's like I curate my show a specific way where it's like at the end of the day, I love that those cats got to come to me. They don't have to, but it always ends up happening because there's only a few outlets for this. And I take pride in being the first one to work with. You know, I don't even want to start the list because I'll leave people out. And sometimes I try to do it, bro. The list of artists that have been on my show first in the last 10 years is insanity. It's like half a rap now.
Well, I mean, you know, and I really respect what you said too of like, you know, in terms of AFH, you know, even when we didn't cover you, you appreciate the platform and the site. And I look at it and you know, the artists on your album, all of them have their own careers that started years ago, but it's awesome to see a Rome Streets or a Rim or a Coda on the same album as Nas and Black Thought and 2 Chainz. And that
Coda's killing it right now. He's killing it. But guess what? A lot of hip hop heads are going to hear him on my album for the first time because he's not part of certain conversations. He has his movement and his fans, but putting him on an album with Nas and Method Man and Dave East and all these other people, and Conway and Benny and Jack Harlow, all those people I just named have all different fans. Now to put them all together, it just helps make the hip hop a better place, man. I'm not doing it to be like, oh, look who I know. I'm doing it because I want to keep this place, this little piece of space I have in my hip hop world. I want to be able to like make people, you know, be excited about this shit again. I feel a certain way when you hear a song. And hopefully I did that. I've been getting a lot of crazy feedback on the album. So I appreciate everybody. Even if it was 2 words, just some of the feedback I've been getting made me feel like everything's worth it, man. All the stress and all the balance is like people are really relating with it and loving it, and it means a lot.
No, it's super dope, you know. And the philosophy you said is the same philosophy we have with AFH. You know what I mean? We take very strong pride in our brand and curate because we know what the audience wants. So.
Like you guys, your site and Two Dope Boys to me is like the 2 places that are like what I love, you know what I mean? Now there's a bunch of other dope websites I go on, but the thing is a lot of it now I'm seeing certain things turn into like, you know, trash tabloids, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't want to see that for hip hop. And sometimes I get too into it when I'm defending hip hop and all this, but I really love it that much that I have to, because I feel like the people that used to do that, like I remember Primo used to get in articles and go in on, like, he just talk everything he felt and be dissing shit. Pete Rock, all these people used to have so much passion about. They still do, but I feel like now those aren't the questions they get asked no more. And it's like I'm in that position where I have to be like, bro, I'm gonna protect this hip hop shit, because if you don't, and I know you guys do too, if we don't, like, it will go to shit. And it's like it has at certain levels, but at the same time it hasn't, because Griselda's shining. Alchemist and Freddie Gibbs are up for fucking Grammy. Like, things are great, but at the same time, there's a lot of nonsense going on.
Yeah, Royce too. I mean, this has been a crazy year.
Yeah, shout out to Royce, man. I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, being recognized. You know,
so Royce was coming to my crib in Boston. Like, he might have been the first famous rapper to ever come to my crib. Like, I've known Royce since I've seen him go from the top to the bottom, back on top, and now he's been consistently on top for a long time now. But Royce has been through it, man. He's seen
you as a producer, you know, talk about like watching him turn into a producer all of a sudden too, because a lot of people
fun to watch. It's fun to watch.
Yeah,
it's dope. I'm not gonna lie. I wish I produced a record on them, but nah, I'm happy. I'm happy he produced his whole album, and you know, it's showing people that that you can do anything if you try, man. Like, Royce is someone that never had to even think about that. He had the best producers in the world in his phone at all times. The fact he wanted to expand and do that late in the game too is crazy. It'd be one thing if he tried to do it 10 years ago when he still wasn't new 10 years ago.
Yeah.
He's doing it now, and that's incredible, you know. I love that.
So you produce for a ton of artists. Who are some people that you haven't yet had in your productions that you want to hear on the track?
The list is very short, man. Obviously Jay-Z. I feel like the whole thing's gonna happen soon, because there's been some conversations had, and you know, I'm working on some crazy albums right now that hopefully I'm putting that into the universe. But me and Jay, like when we see each other, it's just a mutual like understanding, I guess. But I got to get him on something. Kendrick, I love Kendrick. I've never done anything with Kendrick. I produced a Black Hippie song that Kendrick wasn't on, and it was like I was like, what? But anyway, who else? I don't even know if I can really. I'm gonna say Scarface, even though we've done 2 songs, but they never came out the versions that I did, so it doesn't count to me. Scarface, Andre 3000. I'd love to do something with 50. I did a G Unit mixtape back in the day, but he never like rapped on my beat. There's not many, man. I've literally worked with everybody.
It's a pretty list. Yeah. So a year ago, you made a very different kind of album with Bun B. You guys did like I think 12 hours. You did a live stream creating it. So what was the prep? Did you have like tracks that you were kind of like teeing up, or like how did you go about? Or was it all just like press from scratch?
So I came up with the idea. I was like, Bun, let's just do it. I'm gonna get Tidal behind it. I'm gonna like. There was just certain things that didn't work out the way Tidal did get behind it. They actually, a lot of people don't know that they it was available on Tidal only for a week. So they did get behind it, but I really wanted Tidal to do like a live. Instead of going on YouTube, I wanted to be on through Tidal, but it went through YouTube, and it's all good because at the end of the day, probably more people got to see it. But I basically had the idea. I called Bun. I was like, bro, let's do it. All you got to do is like pick the beats and then come and knock it out. I knew how fast Bun wrote. We've done so many records before. And he came up, like it just ended up working out where he had to be in New York for like 12 hours or something the week before. So he came here, seen what the setup was, and then picked the beats. He picked probably like 15, 20 beats. And then when he came back the next week for it, he was ready to go. He didn't write one lyric though. Like he just had the beats. He knew what he wanted to like. He knew the vibe he was going for, and he would just be like, he'd look at his phone and go, pull up this beat, and he'd start writing. Every single verse was written from scratch right here, and that's for all the rappers too. Like none of the rappers showed up with a verse done.
Those real-time projects have just done so much for hip hop on the internet. You got the Static King, joint behind you, and just from Freeway to Saigon. I've really enjoyed that. It's been fun to watch and to watch you evolve with technology to now go to, hey, we can tune in live and watch it happen is just nuts.
Yeah, man, it's been fun. We're gonna keep that going, and I'm looking forward to the next one we do. I'm trying to figure it out. There's been some good conversations. Obviously, COVID threw everything off. We actually did the quarantine album, the 1982 quarantine album, the same way. It was live on YouTube while we did it earlier this year.
Wow, word.
So you talked about protecting hip hop culture before. Like, what do you think are some of the key things that we got to do collectively to protect the culture we love?
Definitely like educate, like education's everything as far as like for the kids, the next generation to understand what hip hop actually is. And I know there's a lot of people teaching courses at colleges now and all that, but I think that should even trickle down into high school more and even junior high school, because hip hop's one of the most powerful cultures in the world. It's in everything you see. It's everywhere you look. It's the way people dress. It's always been like that. But now I feel like nowadays hip hop is definitely the most popular music. It gets bigger and bigger, and people throw that word hip hop around like it's not, like they throw it around, and that's the part I don't like. I don't care if someone says rap or this or that. That's all cool, but hip hop should be protected because it's much more than just It's not a novelty, man. It's a way of life that saved so many people and made so many things happen in the world. Like to this day, I think hip hop had a major part in Obama winning the presidency. I think hip hop had a major part in in peace in a lot of these communities. Hip hop's had like a lot of great influence on the world. I mean, look at all the places in the like. I'm gonna speak for myself. I've been to corners of the planet that I never ever would have gone without hip hop, and I'm going to those corners of the planet with Asian people and Latino people and Black people, and with all of us on a tour bus or a plane, going there, spreading this vibe. And that's like nothing's ever really done that the way hip hop has ever done that in the world. Like You can't say anything else. They'll bring you to Perth, Australia, or you on the same trip you'll go to South Africa or Japan or China or Thailand. Like, obviously rock and roll has a big place, but it's not the same reaction when you go. And these kids, like, even the countries that don't speak English, like the way they study it is a different. It literally influences people to change their lifestyle. That's crazy.
Word. Yeah, that's a perfect way to end it, man. Thank you for everything, not just with this album, but the radio show, the other productions, the body of work, keeping hip hop alive. We appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. You guys stay doing what you're doing, man. We need you.
No doubt. And the album is The Balancing Act on all DSPs now, iTunes, if you can find it. Statik Selektah. Thank you.
No, salute.
Appreciate you, man. Love.